all, Adam Wuiske here from Wuiske Models for part 7 of the layout that Insanity built. So just thought I'd go through and show you what I've been doing since part 6. So what have I been up to? Well, basically I finally started putting in the backdrops, as you can see from that wall of MDF next to me. So that means that now you can't see from one side of this shed to the other. So I've only done both sides of this peninsula and half of the next one over, as in one side of it. That's 200 feet of backdrop. So how have I done it? Effectively, these backdrops are just your standard 8 foot by 4 foot sheets of 3mm MDF. I mark them down the center and then I rip them with a circular saw. That's it. Pretty simple. So the only problem is that they're not actually 2400 by 1200 as most people would expect. They're actually 1220. So effectively my backdrops here are now 610mm rather than 600, which is not a great hassle, but where it becomes an issue is from the headboards. I've worked it out so that from up the bottom side of these cross members, your 600mm backdrop will leave 35mm, the thickness of this, till it hits the framing. Well, I've buggered that up, haven't I, because of that 10mm. So that's all right. So the top of it is a bit kind of like Lego steps, but you get that. We'll work this out as we go. But in short, it goes up pretty quick. It's pretty easy. It's not very pretty from behind because all I'm doing is measuring, clamp them in position with a bit of PVA glue behind it, and then start hitting it with the nail gun. Now, once that happens, at the ends, all I'm doing is cutting a strip between 500 and 600mm long, just offcuts and a few inches wide, and just mounting that as a sandwich board in between the jointed pieces. So just rinse and repeat. So once that's in, the next thing I do is basically smooth it up and then paint it blue. No particular blue, I just had Tyson from Modeller's Warehouse organise something that vaguely looked like the sky for me. And unfortunately I need a hell of a lot more of it. So with this, it's just painted on. As you can see, where I've got track that's going in behind the backdrop. So this will actually be the hidden track going through to Caboolture, which is 2 peninsulas over. I've just got a cutout. Now, I haven't really done much in the way of dimensions and all the rest of that. I'm not going for much. It's all going to be hidden. So there's not really any need to make it overly accurate with the holes in the board. Now, with the backdrops, I haven't actually gone to any great lengths to make sure that they're straight. I found that with layouts like this, where they're relatively narrow, you can't really see from this side, it doesn't count. But on other sides of the layout, where it's, you know, under 2 feet in depth, having a straight background tends to sort of break up the illusion of reality. So what I found is if you get slight undulations and waves in it, sometimes planned, it actually makes things look better. It just looks a bit more natural. So fair enough, each to their own. It's just something I've noticed on different layouts, and I'm working it in on here. It's not something I'm actually really doing deliberately. It's just sort of happening just because the lengths that I'm working with and everything else, it just naturally gets bits of waves in it. And I'm okay with that. The only time it will present an issue is if I've got a background building leaning up against it, which I'm trying to avoid that for the most part anyway. So the way that I've put these backdrop in, as I've mentioned in the past, is I've just got more studding material that I've marked that's screwed onto the cross members of the frame, goes straight up, and then it has the cross members for the headboards coming out from it. Now, all I've done from there is, as I said, just glued and nailed with the nail gun the sheets to it. That's it. It's not very pretty from behind, but it is very quick, very easy, and very, very cheap to do. So the next step for me is to keep going with the headboards and cross members along here on this second peninsula. Now, to give you an idea of where I am, I'll put a little photo up of the diagram just to show you. Now, this section here, directly behind me in this curve, is going to be the Golden Circle Cannery. So it's where all your pineapples used to go from the pineapple bins, and basically the fruit traffic from all over the state would end up in the area that I'm putting in behind me. Where the camera's sitting will actually be Northgate Station. Now, in real life, the Golden Circle Cannery came off the Sandgate Shorncliffe branch, which veered off just north of Northgate Station. In my version of reality, it's on the North Coast line. So Northgate Railway Station, Golden Circle Cannery, and then triple track main line coming all the way through, and then along here heading towards Caboolture. Now, from here, it's about a 70-foot run that way, to go around the end of the peninsula and then 70 foot back, because directly opposite on this other side of the background here will be Caboolture. Now that represents the terminus of the Brisbane suburban network. So from there, these two tracks will disappear underneath the highway bridge at the Caboolture end and then reappear back where I showed you before at Turbot Street. And that gives me the continuous mainline run, which should be about 400 foot. So right behind me is where Caboolture, well actually Caboolture is going to be just to my left, and then you'll see the track disappearing around here to go back to Turbot Street. Now, I should point out, as I said, it's a 400 metre run, double track, so 800 foot, for the suburban run. Now that's half the layout. That's just the Brisbane suburban half. From there, the track continues from here. You have the Wamuran branch leaving the main line, and it heads all the way down to the other end of the shed along the wall on the bottom level, and then veers left to Wamuran. Now, there's going to be fruit traffic and timber coming from that branch line. Now, from that, that's about 140 feet, thereabouts, 150 feet, something like that for that branch. So it's not short, but that traffic will all come in right here. Now, the North Coast line also deviates there, and it continues down in a big U-shaped peninsula, which is probably 280, 300 foot worth of run, and it will head up the North Coast line, terminating at Gympie. So here we are at Gympie. Well, at the southern end of Gympie. So this board right here at this elevation, this is the base for Gympie Station. It's around about 2.5 feet deep, and it's a bit over 25 feet long. So that gives me room for the station and the yard, as well as a very small engine refueling facility. And then from there, it continues north, and you'll have the North Coast line will be branching off from that and becoming hidden onto this shelf here, which runs all the way down 80 feet in length, down through the hole in the wall I've got down there, and goes into the hidden staging, which represents the rest of Queensland. On the bottom level is the Wamuran branch, coming from Caboolture, the two peninsulas over, and on the top level is a mythical western line. So the whole idea of one thing I wanted to model is your Gympie Mail. So this is a train that was still running in the 90s that was effectively 4 old wooden passenger coaches, usually with a 1460 or something similar like that, that was pulling it, that would run up to Gympie, and then it would terminate. Now, from there, what I can also do is put an extra baggage car and a composite guards and sitting van with it, and that train can be split up here at Gympie, and then those 2 extra vehicles can be taken by a smaller locomotive on the western branch to be a daily mail train. So here we are inside the 3rd and 4th peninsula. Now we're at the southern end of the shed. I'll mark it on the little map so you can see. On the other side of where the backdrop's going here will be the southern end of Gympie. And then around behind on this curve on the other side will be kind of a station a bit like Monkland. So that's where the North Coast line is heading back down towards Caboolture, and the Mary Valley branch will veer off. So from that point there on the other side, all the way down about 65 feet, around and behind me, you'll have 2 layers of track. You'll have the North Coast line and you'll have the Mary Valley branch. Now the Mary Valley branch should come in at around about 200 feet long. Now on that, unlike the prototype, I'm planning on putting a small colliery or 2 just to give me some coal traffic. Other than that, it's going to be fruit traffic and timber. Now, the North Coast line will have 3 reasonable sized stations on it, just because we need more. Places along the lines of, if you're thinking Landsborough and places like that. Now, personally, I'm not really that well informed about what actually happened at those stations. I know there was a hell of a lot of fruit traffic, but I've got to do a lot more research on those as to what I put in there. But that's the plan, is that that's what they'll be there for. They're primarily so that we can create distance between Caboolture and between Gympie. So the whole plan is, once you get from Turbot Street through to Gympie, you should be looking at around about a 700 or 800 foot run for that main line. And then you throw in the branches and everything else. And that's where we start getting really crazy, but it should be a lot of fun. So here we are on the northern end of the peninsula, so the big U-shaped peninsula. So just underneath where the camera is where the Wanyuran branch splits off from the north coastline. Just to my right over here is Caboolture, and just here you will have the north coastline having done a U shape around me, gone all the way down and around. It'll come back around here, completely hidden in a tunnel on this section, and then out and up towards Monkland and Gympie. Now, directly above that, at about this level on this curve, I've decided this is where I'm going to put a colliery. So there was a layout that was done by, I believe it was Anthony Vaness, based on the Mary Valley branch, and I really liked it. So it was based on Dagon Station, for those that are familiar, and it was beautifully done, but it's kind of given me a few ideas about putting in a colliery. And being that there is an actual old colliery just down the road at Ackland that's still intact, I've been using that to take photos and get the ideas that I wanted. So now I'm back just on the other side of the northern end of Normanby Rail Yards. So opposite this backdrop will be the car sheds and everything else. Now, so once that last bit of framework I've got to build across there, across the doorway goes in for main and everything else, right where the camera is, that's going to be about where Brecky Creek is. Okay, for those that are familiar with Brisbane. And then right here, we will have the old Albion flour mill and Albion station, triple track main line heading 60 something, actually it's closer to 80 feet that way. Okay, through Nunda station and then into Northgate. And then around that curve way down there is the cannery. And then we come up through Virginia, Sunshine and all the rest of that. And then right here to my right, where the backdrop sort of leans in a bit, that's just so we've got space to put in the Petrie paper mill, the Australian paper mill, or APM, that was still running up until the early 90s. So that's going to take a bit of the coal traffic, all right? It's also going to take some of the timber traffic. So, well, eventually. But that's part of the plan, is every single thing I've got planned for this is multiple stages in operation. And then from there, we go round this curve, which is loosely based on Dacabin, the area that's going in there, and then it'll do the last two stations of Morayfield and Caboolture, and then that's the end of our suburban network. Okay, so here we are at Hamilton. Well, just down from Hamilton. So this would be Hamilton Yard. Now, this is actually fairly kind of semi-accurately based on the prototype. So just behind the camera is BP and Boral Bitumen at the end. So this is when you walk in the layout room on the right-hand side. So this is the branch, the terminus of the branch. Now, right next to me is Hamilton Yard. So there's 4 roads here. Now, in real life, it was actually 6. But in my version, you've got your runaround road. So this is just for access. You've got a storage road and classification road. And then these 2 lines here are actually going to be for containers. So this was where they actually did container shipments and all of that. Now, further over towards the back, you've got the Harriston Cold Stores, which is off the old layout, named after Matty Harrison, and which was the Hamilton Cold Stores in real life. Now, the track in front of it is where they actually did refrigerated containers. So it was a bit of an interesting sort of spot in that it's not the way they would lay things out today. So things were a lot more cramped. And so in real life, this yard is not curved, it's actually straight. And those 2 roads there actually veer off at about 45 degrees. In my version, they curve round and sit next to it. And then behind it, we've got Caltex. So it could end up being Shell, I'm not sure. But it's an oil refinery is there, that's number 2. And then just behind that, you can just see over my shoulder the start of the silo complex for Pinkenbar, which I've moved a bit further west. So this is sort of the business end of town. Now, this yard itself is not huge. The roads are around about 4 metres, Wuiske under 4 metres long. And this 5th road here, where the 1720 is sitting with a motley collection of wagons, that's just for storage, like an overflow of wagons. So whilst you're shunting, you need to drop a guard's van or things like that, they can be dumped there without actually occupying a through road and blocking traffic. Now, just here, right at the end of the branch, we've got, as I've mentioned, BP. Now, so you've got 2 roads for loading tank wagons, road 1 and 2, and then the 3rd road is for that shed, which I mentioned in the last video, for loading your drums and your palletised goods. You've got your storage road here, which was the old branch when it continued further down, and then you've got Boral Bitumen right here. So this structure that's sitting here is actually a Walthers truck loading facility that I've modified and painted it in appropriate colours. Now, for those that have been silly enough to be following me for donkey's years, you might recall I put some photos up of one of these I built about 5 years ago, something like that. And this is not it. I actually don't know where it is. So it was built at the last house because I was having withdrawal symptoms from building stuff. And so I built it, and then I've promptly lost it in the move. So I bought another one and I've built it. So I'll put some photos up, and yeah, this is how it's come along. So this is the actual structure. It's the first structure I've got that is pretty much complete for the layout. Everything else that's sort of sitting around is just located just to give me an idea of how they're going to look and what I want. But this one is actually pretty much finished. All it needs now is the lights. Now, I just want to take a moment just to talk between us blokes. So if there's any Sheilas watching this, go away for a minute. Go and do whatever the female tribe speak thing is that you do, right? And I'm being serious, because let's be honest. So when us guys are in here doing this stuff, when we're working, it doesn't matter whether you're working on bikes or cars or building a layout or whatever you're doing, there's a large portion of our time that is actually just us standing back and looking and going, what? And just plotting it all out in our heads. And it's an important part of the job. Now, I've been doing a hell of a lot of that, and I've got to say that 2 years in, and this far in, I still find myself spending a lot of time doing it. And it's actually one of my favourite bits, is just to stand back and look at what I've done and just to play out what I'm planning and tally that up with my visions of what I've got rattling around between my ears. And so it's not all about just get in, head down, bum up and get the job done. There's actually half of the enjoyment comes with talking to others and exchanging ideas and usually telling them to go and pull their head in, or just standing around and looking and plotting and everything else. So whatever you do, guys, don't stop doing that, because that's probably the most fun element of the whole thing. And then the sense of satisfaction from when that crazy plan actually goes to fruition is even better. Now, whilst I'm doing this, in the last video, I actually put a couple of photos of Normanby Yards in there that I found thanks to the wonders of Das Interweb. Now, I would like to point out, first of all, a massive thank you to Gordon Ross, who actually reached out to me and said, hey, that's my photo, and you're welcome to use it. So thank you very much, mate. I appreciate it. And if you're on any of the Queensland Rail and Days Gone By groups and things like that on Faceplant, you guys are bloody legends. You've got all these photos, and I mean, I have saved thousands of them, right, just to help me with my modelling. So yeah, so hopefully those that I haven't mentioned and all of that, hopefully you're okay with me using them, but they really are helping, and I really do appreciate it. And that's the thing, is so the era I'm modelling, I was a teenager, and being the type of teenager I was, I did take a lot of photos, but I ended up with a lot of rolls of undeveloped film because I didn't have the money. And when I did, I was spending it on bikes and booze and, well, all the things you do when you're a teenager. But yeah, so Gordon, mate, thank you very much for your photos and for allowing me to use them on here. I absolutely love them. And the amount of things that I've learnt from them and things that I've picked up that I'd completely forgotten about. So thanks, mate. I really do appreciate it. Now, I noticed in part 6 of the Layout Insanity build, some of the comments that a few of you left. Thank you, by the way, first of all. But second of all, just a few things. So if you haven't watched the earlier parts of the video series that I'm doing about this layout, then let me just catch you up to speed. First of all, the overall dimensions of this layout is 80 feet long and 40 feet wide. So there is branch lines, 3 branch lines going down the walls. On the western side of the shed, it is double deck. Each of those branch lines is around about 110, 120 feet long. There is a 4th branch line that is the Mary Valley branch, which is around the 250 something foot mark. And then there's 800 to 900 feet of main line in between that, which will be over 4 peninsulas. So there's a fair bit in it. Now, to the person that commented about points and everything else, when I was whinging, as I tend to do, about the price of Pico points, mate, if it was up to me, I would be using like Walther's points or something like that because they're easy to get, but I can't. So this is not HO gauge. This is narrow gauge. So this is all HON 3.5, or HOM as the Europeans call it, or Cape gauge as the South Africans call it. So this is actually all 12mm gauge track. So as I've mentioned in the past, the track is my own. So that's manufactured by my business. The Pico points I'm using are because they're the only ones you can get on this planet reliably. And they're not great, but they do work. So with copious quantities of them, you do sort of work out a few lurks and perks with them and how to deal with them. But yeah, it's not an ideal solution, but it's the best solution I've got because, you know, if it was up to me, all my points would be handmade. I'm just not going to live long enough to do it. It is something I want to do though. But the quantity I need, it's not realistic. You've got to draw that line somewhere. But that's just a little catch up of the basics of this layout, in that size and the fact that it's narrow gauge is what makes it a bit more interesting, shall we say. So that pretty much brings us up to date with where I'm at and what I've been doing for part 7 of the layout that Insanity built. So yeah, there is a lot more to go. As you can see, I'm a long way from even approaching being anywhere near complete. But I'll tell you now, my main goal, what I'm trying to work towards, is getting the continuous mainline run for the suburban route done. And that's sort of what I'm focusing on. So there's going to be somewhere around probably 4 power districts to run that, 4 5-man power districts, and then we'll go from there. Now, but that will mean that I can actually have continuously running trains and all of that. So that's my plan. I'm not focusing on the yards or anything like that. I've just got points that'll be coming off the main line to go towards those things. So that's sort of what I'm aiming on at the moment, because there's a lot more. If I go that way, I will take 20 years to get anywhere. So thank you very much. I hope you've enjoyed watching this, and I hope this has shed a bit of light on where we're actually at and how it's all going. I'm having an absolute ball doing it. Like, I really am. And so thank you to those that have reached out and put comments on the videos and mentioned in some of the chats and everything else about how much you're enjoying it. I really appreciate it. And, you know, I find a lot of enjoyment in doing this and sharing what I'm doing along the way. So this really is a passion project for me. It's something I've been wanting to do my entire life, and I'm finally doing it. And it's really helping my enjoyment in the hobby. It's opening it up to friendships with people that I hadn't met, didn't know, or didn't expect, and I'm learning so much along the way. So thank you to all of those. And if you enjoy this and you want to see more, like, subscribe, all that sort of garbage that you see on YouTube and all that crap. But yeah, next one in part 8, we'll keep going and see how we go. So hopefully I'll get a bit more of these the framing in for the headboards on the next peninsula. But we shall see how we go.